Hello and welcome to another Lakehead International Live. My name is Jordan for those of you who haven't joined me. Today we are doing the Transition Tuesday, which is an open Q&A about visas, study permits, immigration, and of course we are joined by our in-house immigration advisor, Jennifer Hay. To start off, I'll introduce myself and then I'll pass it over to Jen to introduce herself. So like I said, my name is Jordan. I am the International New and Social Media Officer here on the Thunder Bay campus. I help oversee our live events, our social media, our Global Ambassador Program, and other marketing materials. But I'll pass it over to Jen to introduce herself as well.
Good morning, everyone, and my apologies for internet connections. I did miss the introduction, but I know Jordan did introduce me. So yes, I am Jennifer Hay. I am the Razia here for Lakehead University, so a regulated international student immigration advisor. So I will be here to help answer any questions you have pertaining to life in Canada as a student, including your study permit application, travel visas, working while you're in Canada and studying, and then of course your postgraduate work permit after graduation. So we know there's lots of questions, especially during the uncertain times. I can tell you right away, I know I get a lot of questions around biometrics and so forth. So just upfront noting that we know many visa centers, the VACs around the world, as well as Service Canada locations in Canada, still remain closed because of the COVID pandemic and are not collecting biometrics. So we still encourage you to get into the CIC website and start your application online, pay the fee and submit the supporting documents. You get the request for the biometrics and we'll have 3 months to go and complete that. So we hope that obviously the visa centers will start to open up and collect biometrics, but it is still a good idea to get your application in. Once you have been accepted to Lakehead, you can start the study permit process. So I know last week there was lots of questions, so I definitely don't think I'm going to go into showing a lot of stuff today. I think I'm just going to open it up right away to go through some questions, and then if we have time later, I can go through some websites or share some resources if needed. Does
Awesome,
that
thank
sound
you,
good?
Jen. Yes, before we get started, I'll remind our viewers to the email is listed on your screen. So if you do have an immigration question specific, and we encourage you today throughout the webinar to connect with us directly, that immigration email is listed on the screen. If you have a general inquiry about Lakehead University, whether it be about your program, admissions, residence, for example, you can always connect with us on the general inquiries email, welcome@lakeheadu.ca. If you do have questions that you would like us to answer live or behind the scenes by text, we do have our Lakehead experts working behind the scenes diligently. You can always use the Q&A function over on Zoom or comment function on Facebook Live. If you're watching this as a recording, you can certainly comment on that video and we'll still get that notification. And last but not least, I always encourage our viewers to stay connected with us. Follow us on our social media. You'll receive regular updates about future webinars, but you'll also get a really good insider view of Lakehead University. We're always trying to post about what you can do when you do arrive here and sort of the opportunities that are available as a Lakehead University student. Without further ado though, I already see that the Q&A is getting pretty popular, so I'll pass it over to Jen to start with the first couple.
Perfect, thanks Jordan. And I have been just reading them over while you were kind of giving the nice introduction. So Prashant, I have read your message here, the first one that's come in asking about the biometrics. So hopefully my opening kind of explained that to you, where we understand there's lots of students still waiting for biometrics, but that's where you want to be with your application. You want to have submitted it and have that request for biometrics to come in. As soon as the center's open, you're going to go give biometrics and then that will finalize your application. Obviously, if there's further delays with the closures, we are advocating for IRCC to maybe give an exemption during this period of time. So we still want you to have your application in. Should they do anything like that or have any consideration, they definitely are not going to consider applicants who have not even submitted a study permit yet because of biometrics. So Prashant, I think you're in the right place. So you just have to sit and kind of wait for them to open. I know some students will ask me if they can go to other countries and give biometrics, but you can't. You have to wait for it to be processed in the country that you're applying from. So please just be patient along with the rest of the world. We're all waiting for the biometric collection. And thankfully, once you get this done, you won't have to do it again for another 10 years.
Awesome. And then so we have another question that ties directly into that. It's worded a bit differently. It's, I'm not able to give my medicals due to the shutdown on transport and intercity links. Can I apply for a study permit? And the simple answer is yes, you can certainly still apply for that study permit. And we even encourage that, because we know that even though you're not able to provide some details as a part of your application, as long as you are part of that queue to then receive a study permit or be assessed by one of our immigration officers, you'll be a part of that queue, and it'll happen in a more timely manner than delaying until things start to open back up in physical locations.
Yes, correct. And I mean, sometimes immigration will exempt you from medical requests. So it's always good to answer the questions and then see, do they want you to go do biometrics? Do they need a medical from you? Obviously, certain countries it's mandatory. We know that. But, and again, the people in Canada are also penalized with these closures as well. So, I mean, they can't get medicals done here. They can't do biometrics. Immigration is very aware that there's going to be lots of people waiting for these two items. So we just have to watch those two websites from CBSA and IRCC for updates. And of course, whenever we know something, we're going to share it on these live webinars with you guys as well.
Awesome. And then we have another question about whether or not students can start their courses online without a study permit. So I can answer that one. And then Jen, if you want to prep for the next one about bank accounts and the amount of bank accounts.
Mm-hmm.
The simple answer to that is you can begin your Lakehead program online starting in September from outside of the Canada, even if your study permit has not yet been approved. There is a caveat there. So if you are interested in a postgraduate work permit, then studying without a study permit or without being approved for a study permit, a letter of introduction, there may be an impact on the length of that study permit or potentially even your eligibility for that postgraduate work permit. So that's the one note there. So you certainly can start your program online if you haven't received approval yet for that study permit, but it may affect your postgraduate work permit. If you need any more clarification on that, we can certainly help you look into that. And Jennifer, I know, probably has some more details to add if they would like to know.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend getting your application in, still registering for classes and intending, like if you intend to study in September, go on the banking that you'll be able to get your study permit approved by then. Of course, like Jordan said, if you want this fall term to be counted towards the duration of your postgraduate work permit, so students who study for 4 terms or longer with a study permit approved, we should be qualified or will be eligible for a 3-year open work permit when they graduate. So for example, if you're a master's student and you're doing a 16-month master's program, that fall semester, you definitely want to have your study permit approved so that you can count that towards your PR. But if you're taking English classes, or maybe you're an undergraduate student going into a 4-year degree program, that first semester isn't going to matter as much, as you will be having lots of more semesters after that. So you know that you will still meet that eligibility. So it's kind of confusing, I know, and students want a clear answer. Do I need it? Do I not? It's really, you have to consider all aspects of your situation. It's different for everybody. It's different for each applicant. It's different for each program, and decide what's best for your situation. But of course, we will always support you and want you to come to Lakehead. And obviously, if you decide to come in September, we will do our best to assist you and make sure that everything is in place for you.
Sure. And I think, the last note there is honestly, is the fact that at the end of the day, we still recommend that students are submitting their study permit application. We aren't encouraging anyone to delay that application because it will simply add time, and it will take longer for approval or for at least an answer from your immigration officers. And so once again, we certainly encourage you to use your letter of acceptance from Lakehead University to begin that application process.
100%, yes.
So the next question we have is, normally how much is the amount a bank account approving enough funds to support a master's degree to stay with tuition and living?
So for this question, for anyone, no matter what, if you're graduate or undergraduate, when you're doing proof of finance in your study permit application, you need to show that you have enough funds for your tuition costs, annual tuition costs, so 1 year of fees, anywhere from 25 to 30,000, and then an additional 10,000 for your living expenses. So what can you use to show that you have this funds. There's many different options and different documents, and sometimes people will combine multiple things. So for example, if you've paid your tuition fee for your first year, you could show that receipt. If you've paid for residence, you plan to live in residence, you can show that as part of your living expenses. If you have your parents are funding it, so they're paying out of their own bank account, you would show their bank account. Or maybe you have a scholarship or you're getting a funding within your admission, you can also include that. So all of the documents together should show that you have enough funds to support yourself for that first year. And again, if you're in a 4-year program, they're looking at just the first year of tuition plus those living expenses. And now I'm just going to share a link in the chat that just goes more to detail and tells you about what documents could you include for this.
Awesome, thank you, Jen. So the next question that we have is how to prepare an SOP for study permit. Can you give us any references for the same?
If you actually Google SOP, you will find a ton of different samples available online. I don't help students draft SOPs because it's your life and it's your story, and I think you need to tell it properly. If I would give you any advice, the number one issues that I see with refusals for students is the funds, so showing that you don't have enough funds, or the program doesn't make sense to immigration for what you've studied and what you've done and what you want to do at Lakehead. Or they don't think you will leave Canada after your designated stay, which is this golden little line that sometimes they use in refusals when it doesn't really give you any idea of what they're talking about. So I always say in the SOP, it's very important to tell what's happened, why are you picking Lakehead, and how is this going to advance what you already have in your education and help you moving forward, and that you fully intend that after your stay in Canada, you would return home and what your plans are there, and showing your ties to your home community as well. So those would be my recommendations. But again, if you just go SOP and Google, you'll see tons of different samples that you can kind of work from.
Awesome. And then another question we got is, if we get scholarship, will there be any issues in bringing family? So I think that's kind of a two-part question almost, but I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, so not a problem at all. But again, check that link I shared in the chat because it's going to talk about proof of finance. So if you decide to bring family members with you, you need to show the tuition, living expenses, and then about $5,000 per family member. So you just need to, if you have a scholarship that's going to cover part of that, obviously include that with your finance information. But just note that you will have to show more money if you plan to bring your family members with you.
Alrighty.
So international students for working on the visas after the postgraduate work permit, the milestone. So just so you know, when students enter Canada and start their post-secondary studies at Lakehead, you will have the chance to work on or off campus while you study during scheduled breaks. So the summer break or winter breaks, reading week we also have, or holidays. You can work full-time on and off campus, and then working 20 hours a week off campus while you're in classes. But for students who study, like for a master's student, if you're 16 months or longer, you'll be eligible for a 3-year open work permit. And of course, all of our undergraduate programs qualify for a 3-year work permit because they're all more than 4 terms. So you have to study for 2 years consecutively to be eligible. So sometimes I get master's students who want to fast track their studies into 3 semesters, and we don't recommend that whatsoever. You should stick to the program curriculum if you're expecting to have the correct outcome on your work permit.
Awesome. And so the next question we have is, what is the procedures for registration? So I can speak to this a little more in detail. So for undergraduate students, course registration and course timetables have already been released and opened. So course registration can begin at any point for first-year incoming students at the undergraduate level. If you do need assistance, I certainly encourage you to either connect directly with our international student advisors who are assisting students with course registration already, or I also encourage you in joining us on one of our FastPass sessions. So what FastPass is they are live webinars hosted by our enrollment services team, where they will assist an entire group of students through the registration process. The registration is done through your MyInfo portal for your student portal. You would have the student tab. Some important information here though is there are different steps that you need to approve or you need to confirm before you are eligible to register, such as, of course, confirming your acceptance to Lakehead, and if necessary, submitting a confirmation of deposit. For graduate students, it's slightly different. Graduate students are typically eligible to register mid-July. I believe the date this year is going to be July 13th. what happens is that you are actually encouraged to connect directly with your graduate coordinator, who will then assist you and kind of clarify exactly what courses you'll be taking this upcoming fall. But the registration itself is not done on an individual basis. You are automatically registered, if I'm not mistaken, by Graduate Studies.
That's how I understand it as well, yeah.
Awesome. And then we have another question that I can answer. It's, hi, I'm from India. I got admissions to the master's program for fall 2020. How can I get a scholarship? And so funding for graduate studies is limited. There are limited opportunities. There are two typically. There's a graduate assistantship, which means that you will technically be assisting a teacher in their studies. So whether it's helping prepare lecture notes for other classes, helping conduct research for them, helping grade papers or tests, that's typically a graduate assistantship. There are also faculty research awards, where if your research project aligns specifically with an award guidelines or a scholarship opportunity, you may be eligible to then receive that funding towards your research. But like I said, these are limited opportunities, and I certainly encourage you to connect directly with your graduate coordinator or your supervisor and work through some of these questions about funding and whether there's any opportunities to receive it. So next I'll pass it over to Jen to answer a couple questions.
Yeah, so the first one here, just talking about working while you're studying. So this is a really good question, and this is kind of an uncharted territory with immigration. So just know that this is also on our radar, but immigration has given absolutely no indication that there's any issues with you working from India or in your home country while you're studying full time. So obviously the work rules are pertaining to Canadian work here in the country. So there is absolutely nowhere where immigration is stating that you cannot continue working full time while you take your online classes from home this fall. So hopefully that answers your question there. And if anything changes, we will definitely be updating you once they catch up with all these new areas. And then Vishnu, I know you also have asked about the study visa. So I'm also going to share another link here for processing times in the panel. Sorry here. And you can check right there to make sure you're giving yourself enough time to apply. Obviously, the sooner the better. So as soon as you have the admission, you should start your process for the study visa online to allow for enough time. Usually with India, I would say July is enough. You usually have 6 to 8 weeks for processing. It's quite fast there, but with all the VAC closures, I definitely would recommend giving yourself a bit more time for that.
Awesome. And then the next question is from a student who will be joining us this fall semester for the Masters of Education program. They're curious to know if they start their courses online, what will happen to their postgraduate work permit. So, I mean, it's safe to assume maybe the student does have their study permit. So if you could speak to that, Jen.
Yeah, so if you have the study permit approved, then there will be no issue to your postgraduate work permit. You can attend your classes online from Bangladesh and then return to Canada once travel restrictions and classes kind of go back to normal delivery. If the study permit is not approved, again, it's a little bit risky about this term being counted towards your graduation, but you still are able to register and attend classes. As we get closer to September, if you don't have the approval, maybe we want to discuss that a little bit further and see what that means for your specific situation. But again, it looks like you have already applied. You're just waiting for that biometrics like the rest of the world. So we're all going to keep our fingers crossed that immigration is just going to remove this requirement and give approvals. But in the meantime, you're exactly where you need to be, just waiting for that biometric request.
For sure. And then the next question I'll pass over to you is from Vishnu. It is, I'm coming for a 4-year program, an undergraduate program. If the study permit is not approved, does that impact my postgraduate work permit?
And no, Vishnu, so it's completely fine. If you don't get the study permit approved before September, I wouldn't be concerned at all. I would still start your program and get your classes started. You can still at least get to 1 semester down on your degree. And then I would think that before the fall semester is over or into January, your study permit would be approved. Obviously, there's a risk if your study permit application is refused, then you're going to have to address that and either reapply and try to get that done. Of course, that's a risk for anybody whenever submitting an application. So we always tell people to make sure you're paying attention to what documents are required and making sure everything is very clear and concise so immigration can make the right decision on your application.
For sure. The next question is a pretty broad one, and I know that we would all hope for a sooner answer, but do you know when IRCC will announce updates for the study permit application?
Usually at the 11th hour, as we like to say, usually at the last minute, we actually get some clarification, or sometimes they make announcements and then we're like, well, what does that really mean? You said you will support all students through this crisis. So does that mean they can study? Are you still going to let them have this? So of course, sometimes they have very broad um, announcements that we try to analyze for obviously content for you guys. But in the meantime, all we can do is just watch the website. I can again share the website COVID page for IRCC, so you can go there. I actually have signed up for the news announcements, so anytime they announce something, I get an email reminding me that something's been announced, so that's always nice to have as well. Just little options for you guys to look at that. But no, sorry, there's no magical date. They don't really give us any information. Usually we find it comes close to the end of the month, we'll get an announcement from them. So again, as soon as we hear something, we're going to share in these Tuesday sessions with you guys.
For sure, yeah. And we've also committed on our team, if there are any major announcements with that revolve around immigration and study permits and applying for visas, that we'll also be sending out emails to communicate with our international students that are currently applicants to make sure that they're fully aware of any updates out of the federal government. So the next question is about a change of status in the USA. Maybe Jen, if you could dive into that one and clarify.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. You can just apply through the US or whatever. You have to apply from the country that you're currently residing in. So even if you're a citizen, say of I don't know, Dubai, that you still have to, and you're in the US, you have to apply through the US for your study permit. The nice thing is normally if you're driving into Canada from the US, you can actually just get the study permit printed through the port of entry, but considering all the issues right now, we don't recommend any of that. We just say go online. So I think that even in the USA, there's nowhere to give biometrics for Canadian visa applications. And even if you've given biometrics for the US or for other immigration to other countries, it doesn't count. You have to do it with the Canadian immigration. That's still going to be a barrier for you, but you would still submit it online saying that you're in the USA and then whatever your country of birth is in the second question.
Awesome. I think this next question, we may have answered it, but I could be wrong. If I get my study permit, but I'm unable to come to Canada yet, will I still be eligible to get a student work permit?
The study work permit comes when you enter the country. So if you get a study permit and you're unable to come to Canada, you have what's called the approval message, or the study introduction letter is what they call it. So as long as you have that approval, you can still attend your classes. They're going to count. Again, we haven't really dipped into the working in your home country while you're a student. Immigration has given no implication, so it's fine if you want to work there. But when you actually enter Canada is when you're going to get the study permit that shows that you'll be able to work in the country. So once travel restrictions are lifted, and then once classes are back to online delivery, you decide to come to Canada, you will still be able to attend your classes online if you want and still work in Canada off campus while you study.
Awesome. So then the next question is, it's more of a personal question. It's, my visa is under processing. If it delays to receive because of COVID, what should I do? Should I start my program or my classes online? So that's probably the $1 million question that everyone would like to know. And the simple answer there is that we encourage each and every student to assess their own situation on an individual basis and take into consideration some of the notes that me and Jen, as well as many of our colleagues, have been talking about, as to the implications that if you do not have that study permit, how it may affect a postgraduate work permit, for example, if that's something that you're seriously interested in pursuing, or if there's any next steps there. If there are any implications, you need to take that into consideration as to whether you should delay your start or if you are comfortable starting online. Something that we still are obviously encouraging. I know that this student has applied and they're currently waiting for the processing. If a student has yet to apply, if they've delayed it because they feel the VACs are closed or they can't submit biometrics or medicals, we absolutely encourage you to submit that application as soon as possible. So the next question, I'm not too sure if it's too early or not, but what would you recommend for students planning to apply for September 2021 intake? So September 2021 intake, applications will open typically at the end of September, beginning of October of the fall, a full year ahead. So we are still a few months out until applications are even open. And then even at that point, you wouldn't be able to submit an application for a study permit or a visa until you receive a letter of acceptance from Lakehead University, which then, of course, can only come after we have received a full academic history, full transcripts, all that sort of stuff. So we're probably looking at it still about at least 6 to 8 months before you would begin your visa processing for September 2021 intake. So I think it's simply too early to say what would happen there.
Agreed. Okay, so I think now we're going to jump back. Or no, I guess this was
questions I know that you marked, Jen, so I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, there was the one about living on campus in the fall. So even that I can answer. I know that residence is accepting applications and they do have a isolation protocol in place for people who want to live on campus. Our campus is still open for people who want to stay on campus. You can still, if the travel restrictions obviously are lifted, right now you cannot travel into Canada unless it's essential. But once that's lifted, you may be able to enter Canada. And yes, it's my understanding residence is still open and accepting students to stay there. So please just connect with them directly just about the protocol and how to do that, or book, or costs, or different options that are available. So next, we have another question about the IMM 1294, which is my life living in the IMM form. So I know exactly what you're talking about. So I've also already shared the link for the proof of finance. I would go through there. I know that students often get their documents notarized or attested by lawyers in the home country when they apply. It's not a mandatory requirement by IRCC, so I don't do that in Canada for in-Canada applications, but I have heard from many agencies around the globe that it is important to have these finance documents attested. So I would just obviously go from the IRCC website to see what is required. Obviously, if you're having them, if they're not in English, they should be translated. They probably should be certified for that. And then for the language test, or sorry, if they're issued in another language, sorry. That's what I answered there. And then for the tuition is just for 1 year. So if you have tuition, you would show your cost. And then when you want to show how you're going to support yourself, you will show the scholarship as well as your Canadian bank account or however else you plan to support yourself. And I hope that answers.
In addition to that, you mentioned also that as well as tuition, students will still have to include proof of funding for living expenses. And did you recommend, is it $10,000 per individual per year?
Yes, $10,000 for the first individual and then $5,000 per family member after that. So again, I would say if you can take that link down from the side, because it will give you the detailed information about what documents to include, how much for each family member. And you should be able to know your tuition costs, and then living expenses is always 10,000 Canadian per year. Okay, and then I know we have another question. Lots of questions about the VFS office and so forth. So Vanny, I know you have a question here. You're in India. The offices are still closed, no international flights yet. So you plan to take your courses online for the fall. I'm not sure if you're an undergrad or graduate student, but again, yes, you're right, the 50% rule, you can take up to 50% of your program online, even before COVID happened. You could do 50% and still be eligible for your work permit upon graduation. So this semester, again, we would still encourage you to get your application in. If it's not approved before September, you need to consider, does that fall semester really matter for you about your postgrad work permit time? And then decide from there. So again, we hope that everybody will be able to give biometrics in July and things will open and get approvals in August. But in the meantime, again, it's something you have to consider yourself. And then I know there's another question. If you do 3 semesters, 12 months, how much of a work permit you will get? You likely will get a 1-year work permit because you've studied for 1 year. Students sometimes are lucky or there's a mistake made and they get a longer time, but you would actually be eligible for only 1 year if you study in a 12-month program. So we do encourage students to study, and especially masters, for at least 16 months.
And I think that with that specific program could quite potentially be the MBA program. I know that that's something that we addressed with our MBA with advanced studies in management, which then brought students up to the 16-month terms. So if that's something you're interested in doing and potentially pursuing the advanced studies in management, which would get you the 16 months and then potentially a significantly longer postgraduate work permit, you can certainly connect with our graduate admission teams or any one of our international recruitment officers to help you with that process.
And I can let you know just from my experience. So we had the first group of the MBA management students graduated this last December 2019. And I'm very happy to say that every single one of them got a 3-year work permit with absolutely no issues. So the fact that they extended the program into another semester was completely 100% met that requirement for IRCC. So we had great success. So often the MBA students will come to see me. So if you guys are on here now, you should definitely consider looking at the 16-month program over the 12-month program. Huge difference, especially for anyone who wants to stay for permanent residency. Okay, so right now back to our questions. I know there's a question here. I'll take this one for the age. So there is no age requirement for admission to Lakehead University, but there are sometimes you have to explain in your statement of purpose. So your SOP, you'll want to explain if you are 45 years old and you have already been educated and working for 20 years, why are you going back to school? So sometimes it can be harder to get the visa approval, but not admission. There's no issues with admission to master's program, any age restrictions.
Awesome.
Another one, VFS, there is no awareness of when these centers will open. Yes, I'm checking every day to see if any of the visa centers have opened. You can always search online through the IRCC website to see, and it will tell you if it's limited services are completely closed. But the VFS page is probably your best bet to just watch for your actual center. So if you're wherever you are, and then watch for updates on there. But again, even in Canada, the centers are closed. So everybody right now is being penalized with this issue. And I know, Devansh, your question was very similar to the same. So again, yes, we want to get your application in. First apply for that, and then do the biometrics once the VFS is open. Yes, that's what I think you should do.
So then we have another question. It's from Vanny. If a student is deferring the program from fall to winter 2021, then when should they register for the program? And registration actually is open for the entire academic year between September to April. So that's 2021 or 2020 fall to the winter semester of 2021. So we actually encourage students that if they're joining us in winter, they can also start with their registration process. If there are any special notes, if you're in a graduate program, there might be a delay in that and you'll have to wait until mid-July, but otherwise undergraduate students are certainly eligible to register already. And we do have another question about course timetables and the difference between Zoom and web-based, as well as just kind of differentiating whether a course is optional or mandatory. I encourage you to join us on our Transition Thursday in just a couple of days here. I'll be joined by Laura Pettis, one of our international student advisors, and we're doing a beginner's guide to courses at Lakehead. We'll be covering the academic calendar, a bit about course registration. We'll be talking about the different delivery modes within classroom environments and an online environment for sure. But also on top of that, I would certainly recommend if you're an undergraduate student to register for our FastPass sessions. If you visit lakeheadu.ca/fastpass, you can check those out and register. If you're a graduate student, we encourage you to connect directly with your graduate coordinator.
Yes. And I do see there was a question that came in through Facebook. So just through the chat, I'll just address that now. On Facebook, asking about the Masters of Science program, 5 terms to complete. If you complete with 1 term without a visa, you'll have 4 terms. It would still qualify, yes, for a 3-year work permit. Yes, you are correct.
So then the next question again, when will registration for master's program be started so that I can apply for my study permit? So we actually encourage you to start your study permit as soon as possible. There's no sense in waiting for course registration, as course registration for master's programs still won't open for a few weeks here. Typically it's middle of July, if I'm not mistaken. I believe they did announce that it's going to be July 13th. But once again, we do encourage you to start your online application for that study permit, as there's no direct correlation between the course registration and study permit approval.
Yes, that's correct. And I would say that you don't need to register. Like, I don't know, you, as soon as you get that letter of acceptance, you should be starting the study permit application. You should not wait for registration. That comes way later in the year. We have people who are applying for study permits as early as January of this year for the fall. So definitely get that in as soon as possible. Please don't wait for registration. So then I know we have another question about applying for the visa from Dubai, even though you're in India. I know the situation. People ask me this all the time, but IRCC has been very clear. They do not want people going to other countries for visa processing. So if you are in India, you must apply saying that you're in India and have it processed at the VFS there. If you are in Dubai right now, then yes, you can say that you're in Dubai and the processing would go through there. And I know we answered this question here about registering for courses without the study permit and the funding and so forth. I guess maybe you might have been disconnected, or maybe it was my bad connection at the beginning. But just to answer the question again, yes, you can register for your courses. We do recommend you at least apply for the study permit right away. If it hasn't been approved, that's okay. You can still register and start attending your classes. And you have been offered the funding package, so you can include that. If you have a letter from the funding showing that you're going to get so much money, then put that in to show for your large balance of the 30,000 plus 10,000. You can put that funding in there, and then whatever your bank account or whatever else to show up the difference.
Awesome. And we have another question about computer science student from India. And their question is, how are labs conducted online? So that's a really good question. Unfortunately, I can't speak to just one specific program. So what we encourage you to do on an individual basis, so for every student joining us today, if you have questions similar to this one, how are labs conducted online? What will the course material be like online? We encourage you to actually connect directly with your professors who are teaching the course, or your graduate coordinators or chairs of the program, and ask these sorts of questions, because as we've talked about before, each program is unique and delivered in a unique setting. So one computer science lab will not be conducted the same as a nursing lab, for example. And so we certainly encourage you to connect directly with the professor teaching that course, or a chair or coordinator of that program, to ensure that you get those answers to that question specific to whatever you're pursuing, whatever program it is that you're pursuing. So I'll pass it over to Jen to answer a few more questions that she marked.
Yeah, so the question about the difference between SDS and the student visa. So SDS is a student direct stream, and it's a faster way to get your study permit. It's only applicable to certain countries, and you need to do what's called a GIC, which is a guaranteed investment certificate. So this is actually with the bank there in your home country. So India, Vietnam, China, Philippines are quite a few countries that are applicable for this. The bank is actually connected with Scotiabank here in Canada, and the funds are deposited and sit there. So it shows that you definitely have that $10,000 sitting there in your account for your living expenses when you come to Canada, which satisfies the immigration. You would pay your full year of tuition, you would show this 10,000 GIC, and then you don't have to worry about that proof of finance. Immigration knows that you for sure have the funds for your stay. So it's an easier way to go through. And what happens if you apply through SDS and you're not eligible, they're just going to submit your application through the regular stream. So there's no harm in trying to go through SDS if you think that you would be eligible and you are applying, or you are from one of the countries that are listed, to do so. So I would definitely recommend to do that. Either way, you have to show proof of finance. It's just when you do it through the regular stream, you can show your own bank account, you can show scholarship letters, different things. And when you apply through SDS, you need to pay the full year of tuition, and you need to have a $10,000 GIC. So there was a question about approval rates, and I'm not sure, Eileen, if you mean approval to get into the program, like a study permit approval for masters, or students graduating from Masters of Science, or postgraduate work permit approval rates. So I'll give you a little bit of information. We have lots of international students in master's programs. Masters of Science obviously is the biggest field. All of them are successful in graduating, I would say, in their 6 terms, and off into the world. So of course, once they graduate, we apply for the postgrad work permit. Students are eligible for 3 years. Again, most students will take a co-op, so I find that students will always study more than 4 terms in Masters of Science, particularly. And then they get that 3-year work permit, which allows them to gain some Canadian work experience. We know that, for example, like Masters of Science, we may have 100 graduates. There's jobs all over the country, so not a lot of the graduates may stay in Thunder Bay to work, but a lot of them go for big companies like CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, which have offices all over the country. And lots of our graduates are happy and working throughout different areas. So I'm not sure if that particularly answers your question. As for visa approval rates, I know Lakehead has a great reputation with IRCC. We are not released data on that. It's kind of a secret society of visa centers that show those approval rates. So we don't really get to see that, but in our experience, it's very rare that we have students refuse unless they have been untruthful on their application or did not have the correct proof of finance.
For sure. So the next question from Vishnu is FastPass considered orientation? No, so FastPass is actually just a live webinar hosted by Enrollment Services to assist undergraduate students entering their first year at Lakehead with course registration. There is already an online orientation that's begun for students that can help you begin the introduction to Lakehead University, really learn about the campus, the community, academics, online learning, all sorts of things. And there's definitely some very exciting things that are upcoming, modules online through Desire to Learn, D2L, which is also referred to as My Course Link. And I know there will be even more sessions later on this year with our Student Success Center team who hosts orientation, as well as our International Student Services team. We'll be running dedicated international student orientations towards the fall semester. So we're very excited to do that. But of course, speaking about our orientation's transition to university, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight the Lakehead International Live series is actually meant to help fill the gaps in for orientation and also assist you and be able to connect with you on a regular basis. So every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, our International Student Services team, the team that helps all current students, current international students, are helping us host these sessions to begin the transition and begin welcoming our new students. So we're very excited for this new series to be up and running now, and it will continue on until towards the end of August. So I'll pass it over to Jen to answer some more questions. Just to note that we do have roughly 10 minutes left on today's session, so we most likely will not be able to accept any new questions at that point.
Yes, and just reminding you guys, I'm here every week, so please don't stress. There's going to be lots of time to connect with me. I know that immigration is always a confusing area, and we're always here to support you. So thankfully, I'm a very fast talker, which maybe is not the best for webinars and for people around the globe, but I promise I'll try my best to get through the questions with you. So for Ahmed, you've already applied for this study permit. Awesome, that's what we want to hear. And waiting for biometrics. So again, if you're an undergraduate student, I would not recommend deferring your admission to the winter intake. You might as well get started on your degree program and start the classes. If you are in like a one-year master's program, you may want to consider what is that fall semester if you take it online and don't have the study permit approval. But thankfully, you have already submitted your application. You're in the queue. So we hope that you will be one of the applications that immigration would consider approval without biometrics. So please just keep watching for updates, and we will let you know as we hear. Again, it's going to be your decision if you decide to defer or not. You'll have to connect with admissions to see what options you have. But again, we still encourage students. We know immigration will still support your application to take the courses online from your home country this fall.
Awesome. And the next question we have is, it's more so one that Jen could answer, but I think I need to highlight something for her. Will immigration help us get postgraduate work permits during the completion of our course? And I can speak to the fact that I know in the spring, Jen works tirelessly in helping our graduates with that postgraduate work permit approval process and application process. Obviously, she's there to assist and guide you and provide you with more details, and also just be a great go-to connection there. But at the end of the day, of course, students still need to do it on their own accord, and we can't necessarily do it for everyone. But I know that she works very tirelessly to meet with as many graduates as she can to help them with that process.
Yes, and I have the Immigration Resource Center. So I've actually done every application that you will have to do as a student and made a video of myself doing it so that students can access those at any point in time. We do lots of workshops and webinars. And then we also invite other guest panelists to come in and talk about next steps for you. So everybody always wants to know about permanent residency and staying in Canada after graduation. We all hope that you pick Canada as your new home for forever home. But this is an area that I don't really help with at this time. So we would provide extra support to come in and tell you guys about different pathways after you graduate. So I know that there's always a lot of questions about that, but let's get through the study permit approval process first and get registered for the fall. And don't forget that I'll be here every semester and we will support you throughout each term and as you get closer to graduation. And note that I talk to graduates from Lakehead every day. They still reach out to me for support, and that's what I'm here for.
And then I know, Jen, you marked a few other questions to answer, so I'll pass it over to you to follow up on those as well.
Yeah, some of these questions are also related. So as we get to programs that are one-year programs, students will often come to me and say, Jennifer, what if I take a scheduled break? Because a scheduled break is considered study time. So now I'll be studying for 4 semesters instead of 3 semesters. So please note that when you apply for a study permit, you're showing immigration the program that you're being accepted into. If you show an offer letter for a 1-year program in Masters of Forestry, and that's what you graduate from, you likely will still get a 1-year work permit. However, I have seen immigration consider these times. But if you take a break from your studies, it actually now puts a gap in your studies. So that also contradicts another rule for the postgraduate work permit where you need to be continuously enrolled in your program. So master's students have no scheduled breaks. They continuously are enrolled every semester. And our undergraduate students have summer breaks. So they already don't have any classes over the summer and can work and everything else. But students who decide in the master's program to take their own break, unscheduled break, you're not allowed to work in Canada in that term. So sometimes life happens or you have an emergency, you need to go home. Yes, that's what an unscheduled break would be. You would take a leave of absence from your program, have it approved by faculty, and you would be able to explain this in detail to immigration when you apply for your work permit. With students who take multiple gaps, especially when there's not any extenuating circumstances, I have seen postgraduate work permits be refused. So I don't advise on taking unscheduled breaks unless you absolutely have to. Again, sometimes we have death in the family or health emergencies we have to deal with. Those are different situations. But often students want to take a break and work full time and make money while they're in Canada. And this is a big no-no. First of all, you would not be eligible to work in that term. And then this could also affect your end goal, which is that 3-year work permit. It's very important for you guys. I know you're investing a lot in Canada. So if I could stress anything, please continuously enroll, stay at full-time status, don't take unscheduled breaks unless you absolutely have to, so you can have a nice future with immigration. And the next question asking if you require all the documents for SDS, yes. So and now immigration does allow you to submit an incomplete application and you can update your file afterwards, but SDS is quite particular. So if you asked IRCC, I'm sure they would tell you just to go through the regular stream if you don't have the documents ready. But if you think it's only going to be a matter of a week or so, maybe you should just wait and then apply through SDS with the correct documents.
Awesome. And then I know that we have time for one more question, which you marked about time extensions on a 1-year master program. So I'll pass it over to you to wrap up with the last question, then I'll begin my wrap up for the webinar.
Yes, to be honest, this kind of goes back to my big long spill that I just had there about the unscheduled breaks with masters. So time extensions are a little bit different than unscheduled breaks. Time extensions is when you take a longer time to graduate, and immigration doesn't mind that. As long as you're continuously enrolled, you're making progress towards your degree, that's what they want to see. So it's okay if you have a hiccup. It's okay if you take a little bit longer, but don't take big, long gaps in your studies. So there's no issues whatsoever if you decide to take a time extension, but that also has to be approved through your faculty.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining us, Jen. We have answered over 40 questions today, which is really exciting. I know that we still have a few questions in there that we weren't able to get to today, but I do want to encourage everyone to join us again next Tuesday. We'll be live again with Jen to chat about immigration, visas, study permits, all that sort of stuff. In the meantime, I want to encourage our viewers to follow us on our social media. If you head over to our Facebook channel, Lakehead University International, you'll hear regular updates out of the university about future webinars, opportunities to join us and meet with us. But also, most importantly, I think something I'm encouraging more and more is that we do have a group started on the Facebook page for the incoming class of 2020 for Lakehead University. As of this weekend, we have reached as a collective group over 400 students on that group, which is really exciting. And it's continuing to grow and grow and grow. So great conversations are happening on there. People are meeting future classmates, potential roommates, maybe even people back in their home country. I always find it funny when we hear about students that both end up at Lakehead and they realize that they were a few blocks away from each other in their hometown, but they've never crossed paths. They went to different high schools, and now they're here in Thunder Bay or they're in Aurelia. We're also on Instagram, so Lakehead International is our Instagram handle. Twitter is Lakehead INTL, and then then YouTube is Lakehead University. All of our sessions are recorded and uploaded, to our YouTube channel. If you head over to the playlist Lakehead International Lives, you'll see all of our previous live events, whether it be with a different program, a different department on campus, one of our Wednesday weeklies with our admissions team. There's definitely lots of information there and lots of different videos you can watch to learn more about Lakehead. And last but not least, we certainly encourage you to take a campus tour. It can be done virtually, and what that means is that it can be done from the comfort of your own home. It's also, there are no appointments necessary. It's done through your own pace, or at your own pace, I should say. So you can start it today and then wrap it up tomorrow or even the next day. And there's certainly no issues with that. We just absolutely want you to check it out, see our campuses, check out Thunder Bay, check out Aurelia. And I think that you'll be set and you'll fall in love with the campus just like we have, because the buildings, the nature that surrounds us is truly amazing to be, and it's a great learning environment to be a part of. So thank you again for joining us, and thank you, Jen, for hosting the session with me. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll see everyone not too long ago, or not too soon. Hopefully we will see everyone next Thursday with myself and Laura chatting about Beginner's Guide to Courses. Already.
Yes, everybody have a good week. Thank you very much for having me, Jordan.
Thank you.